LSU is bringing Olympic-level speed to Death Valley in August, and Clemson fans need to get the scouting report. You'll get it right now on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over at 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to here, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. You know how we do it here on Locked On. If you're an everydayer, exclusive Clemson content all throughout the week. Don't forget to follow me over on X at The Morgan T Show so we can talk about all things Clemson whenever, however you want. I put polls over there. I have discussions, whatever. I love to get your opinions over there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And we have a lot to talk about, most of it coming from really the responses that you've been giving me in the comments over on YouTube and over on X as well, just about the previous show that I did with LSU and talking about their running back group and what Clemson can do to possibly match that and what they maybe not be able to do. And one of the things that I put out there was that the running back group was one of the better groups in the country, I felt like, because of the 1-2 punch and then that true freshman guy they have coming in. If Clemson had that running back group, then Clemson would be probably the national champion, crowned already preseason because LSU's running back group, I really, really like them. Even LSU fans got in and said, Morgan, I know you're drooling over the running back group, but you have not even said anything about the wide receiver group and that they are possibly the fastest wide receiver group in the country. And that this will be the matchup that LSU dominates, not the running back matchup. Now, I assumed that the running back matchup to me, if I'm Brian Kelly, I'm leaning in on that running back matchup because of what happened in 2024. We know Clemson struggled and allowed big time chunks of yards from the running game that just wore them down over time. Have they been able to address that? Well, I do actually think that Clemson has done everything they can do to address their issues in the run defense part of their game. They've gotten a new defensive coordinator that's much more aggressive. They brought in a defensive end that's not just, that is one of the best in the country. I don't want to talk bad about anybody else. I talk good about him. He's one of the best in the country and will help. You have also on the other side, one of the best, if not the best defensive end in the country in TJ Parker and Peter Woods, another guy. So and Devontae Capehart. So their front four actually has been built to now it should stop the run. Their linebacker group is led by Ben Boulware, much more aggressive. Their defensive coordinator, much more aggressive. So technically, if you say strength versus strength there, you could possibly say that, even though it really necessarily wasn't in 2024. And that's where I said, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should look at these LSU wide receivers, because if you think about where Clemson maybe has a weakness, I would start to lean more on that secondary. I would start to lean not really on the cornerbacks, although depth is a question there, but the safeties, that back end of the secondary, we don't really know. I mean, Kylan Griffin and Ricardo Jones, what do you have on them other than a few good plays here and there, a good spring, but consistency we don't know about. Performance under pressure we don't know about. Ability to make it up when you make a mistake and rebound with raw talent, sometimes in the secondary, it's not so much about being perfect. It's just about covering up your mistakes. And so we don't know as much about the safeties. And so that's where it would match up with the wide receivers, might be a strength versus a weakness there. Now, LSU, do they have a wide receiver group that's one of the fastest in the country, maybe even the fastest? Well, I was looking into it. They actually have 4 wide receivers that have been on record of sub 4.4 or near 4.4 speed at some point in their high school or college career. Now, to me, I don't have to explain this to you. If you've gone to high school, if you've gone to college, if you follow sports at all, you know that is fast. That is burners. That's the jets, right? There's different types of speed, though. There's track speed and then there's football speed. We've seen it many times where a guy comes in and he's really fast on the field, but when he puts a freaking helmet on, he disappears, right? There's just something about that. When he gets pushed off the line of scrimmage, he can't rebound from that. Now, if he gets a easy start in perfect shoes on a perfect day in track and field, yeah. But in football, it's different. The secondary can disrupt you. The defense can confuse you, and they can lock you down with zones as well. So it's not all about raw speed, but as we know from Tyreek Hill, sometimes it is all about raw speed, but not just speed in track, in shorts and in tights, but speed with pads on too. LSU does have that. And they really didn't have it as well last season. So when you go back and you look at 2024, it's pretty much revamped. Now they have a couple of guys that they've brought back and are going to be guys that you have to worry about. But they've brought in some new guys that you also have to worry about. The biggest one for me has to be Barion Brown. And some people say, well, don't worry about him as much, But he's the one that kind of lit up Clemson in the Clemson-Kentucky bowl game. He really didn't have a ton going on the whole season. And then Clemson made him look like a freaking superstar. So Barion Brown, super fast guy, great 40. At Kentucky was a kick returner guy, had a kick return touchdown against Clemson. He had a touchdown, I think, in every way against Clemson, rushing, receiving, and special teams. Although they still lost that game. So Clemson can overcome, and they can still win even if Barion Brown beats you in every facet. But he is on the team for LSU. So that is a concern. It has to be. They also have in Oklahoma transfer Nick Anderson, who didn't do anything in 2024, but in 2023, 21 yards per catch. And so he's a guy that can stretch you. He's a very long guy, going to be an outside guy, I believe. So you've got already speed and huge chunk yards right there. And 2 guys that they did not have last season to add to Garrett Nussmeier's arsenal that he did not have. Aaron Anderson, extremely fast slot receiver, almost 900 yards receiving last season, 5 touchdowns. Punt return threat, Xavier Thomas, a punt return threat. They even have a sophomore burner in Destin Hill. I mean, I'm telling you, they have every guy that I've mentioned has speed and can get separation and has huge yards after catch. Could it be the fastest receiver in group in the country? Well, I did look into that. That's debatable. Texas fans like to say they have a good group. Clemson would like to think they have a good group, but I think speed is kind of where Clemson does lack. They can get separation, but they don't have a bunch of guys that you would say were burners. And I think LSU definitely has that. Xavier Thomas, kick returner, Aaron Anderson, slot guy, Barion Brown, do-it-all guy, Nick Anderson, outside guy. They have speed at every single position that you're going to have on the field versus them. So the boundary threats are there. The jet sweeps will be there. The go routes will be there. The yardage in special teams will be there. Now, the biggest question for me is that chemistry. How will it all match up with Garrett Nussmeier? because Garrett Nussmeier is still evolving with these guys. The handful of guys that I mentioned, half of them weren't on the team last season. So Nussmeier is having to get used to these guys quick. And the first real game that he's going to have is against Clemson. So he's not going to get kind of warm up games when it comes to the season. And it's going to be in Clemson at Death Valley, and that's going to make it even more challenging. We know that they are stacked with track athletes. Are they one of the fastest in the country as they could be? Tom Allen's defense and Mike Reed and Mickey Kahn, their secondary, is going to be absolutely stressed out if the front seven doesn't do their job. And so we'll have to see how this chess match goes on. This is what makes it so exciting, because we get closer and closer, and then all the talking stops and we get to see what exactly will happen on game day. All right. I mentioned these guys. I'm going to come back and tell you one guy could be the biggest monster of them all. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale. I don't know how Taylor Swift fans do it, only to lose your spot for a show that you really, really want to see, and now you can't go. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of sitting there waiting in a queue and hoping and all that goes along with those ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. I don't like sitting in a queue. I've told you this about concerts. I've told you this about Banana Ball, all these things. They are exciting. You can make memories. You can get great tickets if you somehow luck up and get a certain lottery. You don't have to wonder and worry about that because you get Game Time. You can take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I know that you're not going to like this because I'm going to have to break it to you. But what is the one position that even Brent Venables seemed to struggle keeping under lock? It wasn't outside wide receiver. It wasn't kick returners or quarterbacks. It wasn't slot receivers. There was one position that even the great Brent Venables had struggles against at the highest levels of college football. And that was the tight end position. And we, as Clemson fans, will be standing across from a young man who is actually a really good basketball player, but also an amazing football player that is in the making. He didn't get much time as a freshman. He was really a red zone threat mostly. He will still be that. But LSU fans have reminded me of him, told me to take a look at him. And I am now bringing back to you my thoughts on him. Trey'Dez Green, 6'7", monster, nightmare matchup. 240 pounds, basketball guy, football guy. Last season, 13 catches, 101 yards. 4 touchdowns in just 13 catches. So you know that's telling you they're not using him often last season. They're not using him for big chunk yards last season. Although, that's still a good clip there. But the biggest thing for him is that red zone threat when you're within 25 yards, 4 touchdowns out of 13 catches. And the spring reports are showing that LSU is moving him out, moving him from a traditional tight end spot, moving him to the boundary X, moving him in motion, trying to do whatever they can to create a one-on-one situation. When I tell you right now, 6'7", 240, who can stop Trey'Dez Green on the Clemson sideline? I'll wait. It's hard for me to think of it. There's not many legit options that will be able to go toe-to-toe with this guy every single snap. So Clemson is going to have to do something to figure out a way around this. And I worry about it because Clemson notoriously struggles to shut down tight ends. They get everybody else sealed up. And all of a sudden, O.J. Howard goes off and ruins your national championship hopes. So what will Tom Allen be able to do to be able to stop all those other guys we mentioned, those speedsters, but also to me and to a lot of LSU fans, the biggest monster of them all in Trey'Dez Green? I did mention that I love their running back group, and I felt like if Clemson had their running back group, they would be a national championship, preseason national champion vote, which Clemson may already be high up there. But with that running back group, they would definitely be there. They would be probably a favorite for the national champion. With a tight end like this and wide receivers like this, LSU has everything they need to absolutely dominate Clemson in game one. As far as skill position players go, there's plenty of other reasons why this won't work out for them. And I'm probably going to tell you that in segment 3. But Trey'Dez Green's body, length, frame makes him an extremely reliable red zone option. And his emergence as now his second season coming on could really hurt Clemson and destroy their coverage. So that's where I'm really concerned. He has a catch radius advantage over just about everyone. So Garrett Nussmeier doesn't have to be perfect. He doesn't have to throw strikes. He just has to get it in the vicinity. He can stress you out in spacing because of his ability as a basketball transplant to kind of play not just a traditional tight end position. So they will move him to where till they find a mismatch. He's not just going to sit on one side of the field, and he's not just going to sit in one position. When he flexes wide, the safeties are going to have to figure out a way to respect that and respect breaking other players breaking across the middle. So maybe he doesn't even get the catch, but he will cause a disruption with other players. The linebackers in this group and Ben Boulware's group of guys, Wade Woodaz and Khalil Barnes and in the nickel and the Tiger spot, I guess, and then Sammy Brown. If these guys get matched up against a 6'7", 240 guy, who's going to have more success? Maybe you lean more towards Wade Woodaz in this scenario because Wade's taller of a linebacker. If Clemson counters with a nickel and Khalil Barnes, I don't know if you'd really want that either, because then he could move inside and then open up something for the run game. You know, Tom Allen's matchups are going to be stressed out game one. And we're going to see, and this is what I love about this matchup, is we're going to see all the hype and all of the discussion and all the improvements Clemson has made. Did it really matter? Did it really work? And, while I'll hype up Trey'Dez Green, he's still developing, He's not going to be perfect himself. This is just his second season in college football. The power forward tight end, Clemson's also trying to their hand in that as well with Ian Shefflin. So we'll see how it all works, but I think Clemson cannot let this guy destroy them. They have enough weapons to deal with, but I think this is one of the guys that you don't want out there running wild on your defense. All right, I've talked about all the things that should scare you, should have you shaking in your boots. But now I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened last season against LSU and maybe what some blueprints are there for Clemson in 2025. One of the games that I went back and watched the highlights from 2024 was LSU at home hosting Alabama, and they got absolutely demolished, embarrassed at their home field. It was like 21-6 going into halftime. They finished 42-13, and that 13 was at the very end. Alabama absolutely destroyed LSU. Had no answers on offense or defense for the Crimson Tide. LSU looked ridiculous. Will that happen again against Clemson? Well, LSU had turnovers, and Alabama had Milroe. And that stress on the offense and on the defense really pushed LSU to a point where they could not even hang. They couldn't even keep up with that amount of stress. But as I say that, I'm telling you right now, Clemson doesn't have Jalen Milroe. You can say Cade Klubnik's better than Milroe. As an overall quarterback, yes. As a runner, which is what Milroe did to LSU, I would say no. Jalen Milroe is a better runner than Cade Klubnik. Last November, rainy night, Alabama won 42-13. Jalen Milroe rushed for 185 yards, 4 touchdowns. LSU committed 3 turnovers, and Nussmeier just could not figure out anything. I think at halftime, he only had 1 pass beyond the line of scrimmage, or close to halftime. I think he kind of tried at the very end until the time ran out. How can Clemson replicate that performance, that domination? And that was a road win, a road domination, blowout from Alabama. How can Clemson replicate that? Being able to blow out LSU is possible, although they have made adjustments on their team to try to stop that, to try to hang. As we've talked about, they have running backs, they have wide receivers, and they have a tight end. They have the skill position players to do whatever they need to do and to hang with anybody in the country. So how will Clemson be able to replicate that scoreboard success? Well, it's not going to be with legs of the quarterback and Cade Klubnik, even though I do think that Cade is going to need to run the ball in 2025. And he's going to need to run the ball against LSU. But to me, Cade needs to move the ball with his legs in order to convert third downs more than he needs to have big, giant, 100-yard games and 4 touchdowns. He's going to be a threat. Maybe not 4 touchdown threat with his legs, but he definitely can do that. I don't know if he can reach up to 200 yards rushing, and I don't even know if Clemson really wants that. So I'm going to say it's going to be less about replicating what Jalen Milroe did, even though, again, Cade can hang. He's fat. He's a little deer. He's a gazelle at times. But to me, it's more about pocket collapse and discipline on the defense and Tom Allen's front seven and how well they rotate, how well they stay fresh, how well they keep front four pressure on LSU's actually very young offensive line. And what I will say is their weak point. So this was where the strength versus strength on the Clemson side, strength versus weakness on the Clemson side should and hopefully will match up. Peter Woods, DeMonte Capehart, TJ Parker, and Purdue transfer Will Helt combine for a group of guys that should be one of the best in the country. You can tell me all you want, LSU fans, because I know you're listening, that they're just ACC good. And that is absolutely ridiculous. And you need to be careful because you're going to walk out of South Carolina with your head hung low and with a big L on your record if you think that they're just ACC good. These guys are going to be high NFL draft picks, and they have everything they need to have a final season for some of them, Capehart, Parker, and Woods, in college football that is absolutely dominant. Peter Woods and DeMonte Capehart are going to be extremely difficult to run the ball against. TJ Parker and Will Helt are going to get to the backfield, and they are going to force fumbles and try to do everything they can to squeeze you and to force turnovers. The aggression is going to be constant. So I expect a lot from Tom Allen to put pressure on this offensive line that is very young and then impose a lot of stress on Garrett Nussmeier. As we saw with Alabama, when you do that, Nussmeier struggles to throw a 5-yard pass. So to me, I know that they're going to be stressed against the wide receivers. I know they're going to be stressed against the tight end. That's inevitable. There's too many weapons from LSU. But coverage integrity is still important. The corners have to press. The safeties have to read and identify the biggest threats quickly. But the biggest thing is the front seven has to get into Nussmeier's bubble and disrupt him. Nussmeier's worst outings are when you speed up his clock, when you get in his face, when you create that frustration. You make the field look extremely short for him when he doesn't have as much time. LSU has tried to bring in a few guys. Weston Davis. They got a recruit, Solomon Thomas. Will they be ready for game one? I don't know. We'll see. Clemson's front seven is ready and veteran and extremely experienced. So week one offers that big time test, line versus line for me. While there's many areas that I don't think Clemson does have an advantage in, this is the area that I do think Clemson has the advantage in. You have to get back to that aggression, and this is the coach and the defensive coordinator and Tom Allen that you needed. You could not spend another day sitting back and letting a quarterback decide and trying to outsmart the quarterback. Don't try to outsmart Garrett Nussmeier and Brian Kelly. Instead, try to fluster, try to get in the bubble, try to reduce the play clock for them, reduce the internal clock for them. How often and how successful Clemson can pressure and get in the backfield will be able to determine this game, in my opinion. So while there's a lot of things we need to worry about, there's also a lot of things we can be excited about for week 1. And hopefully I'm hyping it up for you because I know you are ready for a national championship style matchup in week 1. ACC, SEC, Tigers versus Tigers, Death Valley versus Death Valley. And ultimately the start to our 2025 football season. Hey, thank you so much for making Clemson, Locked On Clemson, your first listen today. For your second listen, check out The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, happy Independence Day. Happy July 4th. Hopefully you go out. Hopefully you return with the same amount of fingers and digits that you had at the end of the night that you had at the beginning of the day. And I wish you all the best. Hopefully you enjoy it. Stay safe out there. Don't do too much crazy stuff because you need to get back here for the Monday show of Locked On Clemson. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.